So why are Christian events and Christian nights at theme parks the absolute worst for employees and among the worst behavior you're ever going to see? Working at a Christian event or a Christian night at a theme park is the worst. You're going to see the worst behavior and just crazy stuff. Now, before you start thinking I'm just going to do this video bashing Christians and smashing them for being rude and rotten and everything, please keep in mind, I'm a pastor. I'm a minister. I am a Christian. I have been an attendee of the events, and I have also been a worker at the events. But there are reasons why Young Christians Weekend at Silver Dollar City is nicknamed Young Heathens Weekend, and why Night of Joy had some not so nice nicknames at Disney. Why Southern Gospel Weekend is called Southern Grumps Weekend. Because unfortunately, there is just something about the people that come to these. When we worked at Silver Dollar City, during Southern Gospel weekends, we would actually have to change a little bit of our train script because we knew that there were going to be some people who got offended over nothing. My wife got to deal with rude, grumpy people who would be wearing shirts about love Jesus while they're yelling at you for not being fast enough. It's just something about that group of people. And I say this as being one of those. Now, for the Young Christian Weekends, the Night of Joy, the concert series, there is something that happens where you get a lot of vandalism, a lot of theft. You get teens making out in places they shouldn't be. Drug and alcohol things are a definite issue at them. Part of that is because what happens with those groups, you've got teenagers who are turned loose, free reign. Teens are teens. They love to test limits and go beyond them. The other thing that happens a lot of times there is you have some very well-meaning leaders. You know what, guys? This is a fun event. Invite all your friends. Invite all those people who never come to youth group. Let's take a bunch of people that never step foot in a church and hope that by some chance they're going to hear a little snippet of a song somewhere and go, oh, I should be a good person. Okay, that is kind of the thinking that happens, and I've talked to lots of leaders and pastors and youth pastors over the years, and it's prevalent, and you're kind of going, hello, it doesn't work that way. But that's why you get a lot of people who would never step foot in a church that goes. That doesn't mean that all the ones causing problems are non-church people. No, trust me, there's definitely some there too. I mean, the old joke is that the pastor's kid is the worst behaved one in town. That's not always true either, and I say that as a dad of two amazing kids. But there is this idea that when they get to the parks, they go crazy. And part of it is because they're not supervised. Part of it is because they're not people who care about behaving. Part of it is because they're free to go test their limits. And so it creates a lot of chaos at times. Now, there are a lot of people that go to these events that are wonderful. They're great. They're fantastic. They're kind. They're gentle. But you don't notice those because they're doing what they're supposed to. You're having to deal with the others. During Night of Joy at Magic Kingdom, it meant that we had to do all sorts of extra steps to help protect ourselves in the park. We were given directives that if we saw anybody backstage who was not in a Disney costume, that we were supposed to call security, unless they had their Disney ID out prominently and easy to see, because they would sneak backstage and go into places they weren't supposed to be. It meant that we had extra security all over the park. We actually, as a photographer, the one time I worked at Night of Joy, I actually just got in the habit of holding onto my PDA and holding onto my camera wherever I went, because you were liable to get bumped and jostled. And I'm not saying they would steal anything, but they weren't necessarily careful and polite about it. It was just an odd atmosphere, and you get a lot of people that put on airs, for lack of a better way to put it. Southern Gospel Weekend, we saw this a lot. And then we saw this a number of times with the leaders of the church groups. And I wish that there was a good excuse I could use for them. As a Christian, there are certain things that we are supposed to live by. To treat other people as we want to be treated. To be kind. There's this passage in Scripture that talks about the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. You're supposed to be nice to people. And yet, there is just something that, oh, you're not one of us. We can be rude. We had a few times. My wife was working at one of the stores at Silver Dollar City. And this lady came in wearing a big Jesus shirt. And she was just really condescending to my wife. And, you know, maybe if you went to church, you wouldn't have to do something like this. And my wife looked at her and said, my husband's a pastor. I'm a minister. Can I continue to help you, or do you need to get saved? Okay, she didn't say the last part, but she sure thought it. It's one of those things that I have to say, as a pastor, it frustrates me. Years ago, I used to work at a Denny's, and I worked the overnight shifts and occasionally Sundays. And Sundays were the worst day to work. It was embarrassing because you knew if you worked on a Sunday that the groups that came in from church weren't going to tip you. Or they tipped very badly. And then, of course, your coworkers are looking at you going, well, you're the Christian. Will you explain it? I don't know. And I would get that at Disney. Well, you're the youth pastor. You're the pastor. What's the deal with them? They're not living what they claim. and it really became a challenge to me as a believer to make sure I lived it. Because that's the example so many saw. It's still the example so many people see of Christians and church people, is they see the rude behaviors, the rude attitudes. You knew if you were working on a Christian night that you were going to have people yell at you for dumb stuff while they're wearing their big Christian shirts. You knew that you were going to have people treat you rudely for no reason while wearing their big Christian shirts and singing their hymnals. And it was hard. It was really hard. It definitely made a challenge to me to make sure that I don't treat people like that out in public. Now, I'm not perfect. I've had times, okay? All of us do. But it's very hard when you've got people who have a bad image of Christians and then they work at something like that and they see it fulfilled. So why are Christians the worst? Why are they among the meanest and rudest? And again, I point out to the fact that the vast majority of them are wonderful. They're sweet, they're well-meaning, they're kind, but you don't notice them. They're not the memorable ones. What you remember are the ones that are loud, annoying, obnoxious, and this is really true with any guest. The ones that stand out as being the pain. You notice it more during those events, partially because it's supposed to be the event where all the nice people come, and then not all of them are nice. So it does tend to stand out a little bit more there. And there does seem to be a higher percentage of people that have their noses in the air. And really, they shouldn't, because the whole point of it is that we're supposed to be humble. It's one of those things I've struggled with over the years as to why those are the worst instead of the best. They should be the best. They should be the ones that are the most fun to work, the biggest pleasure, the nicest people. And you do run into those, but unfortunately it's the opposite. As to why, I have yet to come up with a really good reason other than people are people. Regardless of what faith they put out there, regardless of what position, and people in general, if they don't work hard at it, tend to be self-centered and self-righteous. And it just stands out more when it's in the name of a religion. And especially when it's one that says that it's got higher standards and then it doesn't live to that. So I encourage you, be nice, be gentle, be kind, be patient, exert self-control. Whether you're a believer or not, don't let those who claim they're a believer and then don't live it be your example. Because keep in mind, people are failures. We fail at everything, whether we like to admit it or not. We don't hold to those standards that we like to push everybody else to stand up to. It's easy for us to say, you claim this, you should be this way, and you failed once, and so therefore you're miserable. But we don't hold ourselves to the same standards a lot of times. We excuse ourselves, oh, I didn't mean it, I was in a bad mood, or that, whatever we do. Don't hold other people to a standard that you can't fulfill yourself. And you want people to show gentleness and kindness and patience and forgiveness to you, show it to them as well. And when those who should be setting the example don't, be forgiving. Oh, one of these days as a Christian I'll be able to stand up and say, see, we are good, we did it right. And I can point to a number of things, but oh, I hate those times when I'm embarrassed. So, what are your experiences with the Christian events? Have they been good? Have they been bad? I would love to hear it. If you're a believer, share your experiences with me, good and bad. If you're not a believer, I would love for you to share your experiences as well, so that way those who may not see themselves can see and understand a little bit better. Understanding is a good thing, and I think the more that we share from both sides, understanding and in gentleness and love, I think it'll be good for everybody. So be sure to share your comments below. Share the video as well. Don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons for your support too. God bless. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to know about contact information, fan pages, merchandise, and more, please be sure to check the description below. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to know when I have new ones, well, make sure you hit that subscribe button right up there. And if you want to see another one of my videos, well, I've got a great one for you right here. And a huge thank you to these wonderful people here who support me on Patreon and with YouTube memberships. They get behind-the-scenes information, special perks, and more. If you'd like to know more about that, well, make sure you check that button right there. Thank you so much.